dialoguing with these people through other international bodies.
Straight talk, no holds barred.
That's what Hamas did, and Hamas say they didn't do it, but Hamas lied.
You contradict what America's report, you contradict Israel's report.
The Liberation Organization died. The children, they will rise up tomorrow and fight for liberty.
Biggest conversations from around the world. Borderlines with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Fridays at 4 p.m. Let's talk.
And it's a good afternoon, Lagos, Nigeria, wherever you are joining us from, those of you joining from the abroad, those of you who now tune in from Israel, those who tune in from Amsterdam and all over the world. Welcome to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders in Nigeria. We have an interesting show for you today. And why do I say that? In case you haven't noticed, it would appear that all over the world, there is a running thread. There is a running thread from citizens and general public about democracy and the way they are governed. So let me give you a quick introduction and then I will introduce my guest. So if you remember, we had protest and public participation, which have surged globally, reflecting the widespread discontent with governance and socio-economic conditions. Recent events in Nigeria, Bangladesh, the US, and the UK illustrate the diverse motivations and responses surrounding these movements. In Nigeria, the End Bad Governance protest commenced on August 1st, organized by a coalition of civil society groups. Protesters are voicing their frustrations over the soaring cost of living, which has hit a record high, with inflation at over 34% and food prices exceeding 40.87%. In Bangladesh, protesters have erupted against government economic policies, particularly regarding the rising cost of living and allegations of corruption. Some demonstrators called for the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, whose administration has faced criticism for its handling of the economic and civil rights. She has resigned and she has fled the country. This turmoil has deep roots in the country's political history, characterized by a long-standing rivalry between Awami League, AL, and the Bangladeshi National Party, BNP, which has often led to violence and instability. Now we go across to the United States, where we've also seen protests fueled by various social issues, including immigration. Same in the UK, which we can also call immigration, as well as racism against immigrants. So I have with me today this is his first time on Borderlines, but it is an absolute pleasure. I suspect his parents must have known what he was going into when they gave him his name, but we shall ask him. I have with me a wonderful guest by the name of Justice. Yes, that's his name, not his profession. His name is Justice Ojienoh, and he will correct me if I'm wrong. He is a partner at Solicitors and is an advocate for human rights. That's actually his speciality. Justice, welcome. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, my sister, and good morning, afternoon, or evening to all our listeners all across the world, depending on where you're listening from.
Indeed, Justice,
or
my name.
What you're from.
My name is Ireti. Welcome to Borderlines. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. We have so much to cover, and we don't have much time. So let's start from home. So we had the 10 days End Bad Governance protest. You know, the likes of Shore called it Days of Rage. You were part of that protest. During the build-up, there were all sorts of online disagreements about the need for a protest and the fear of violence, etc., etc. As a Nigerian citizen, as a human rights advocate, as a legal practitioner, what informed your motivation to be part of the protest?
Okay, my primary motivation with respect to this protest was to ensure that the rights of protesters are fully ventilated and protected. That was my own primary reason why I had to hit the streets. Secondary motivation is what is motivating every other Nigerian: hunger. People are very, very hungry on the streets. I was at the protest ground and I saw rage firsthand. I had to, aside from the fact that, yes, we went to the police, to various detention centers to ensure that persons were released. What my major role was on the grounds, what I experienced, even though I didn't plan for, was to keep begging Nigerian youths not to take the laws into their hands, because it looks like they've had enough of the government and the way the badness or the terrible nature of the government of the day. So that was my own experience on the streets.
Now, since then, of course, part of the demands of the protesters was for the president to come out and talk to the nation, talk to the people, talk to those who arguably voted you in. At the very least, talk to every Nigerian and tell them exactly what you're doing and how you're going to get us out of this. Now, what they do say is, the president told us, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. His supporters will say, please be patient. Okay, I'm working on these hunger issues. I hear you. Although he's spoken to us twice, many are not satisfied with what he said. But one of the things that he did say was, I would like, or at least the FG said, is who do we negotiate with if we are saying there is no leader for this protest? So how does government begin to negotiate, in your opinion?
Okay, in my own opinion, there is some requirements that are unanimous, that cut across all the protesters generally. They were demanding for a deflation in the price of goods and services, especially food. That's very, very easy to negotiate with all Nigerians. Do everything you can to ensure that immediately as a deliverable, the price of things come down. I'll give you an instance. What happened in 2012 when the president also joined some of us in protesting in Occupy Nigeria, the same venue in Ojota in Lagos, was that everybody made demands. It wasn't led by anybody in particular. Everybody made demands for the price of PMS at the time to come down. Immediately after the presidential speech, the president at the time ensured that he put it as one of his deliverables. And immediately after, you could go to the pumps and see that, okay, the price has reduced, and every Nigerian enjoyed it that way, that time. But now the president came out to speak, and he practically was speaking above everybody's head. He was talking about the prosperity that the average person, the closest market to the Ojota Park is the Mile 12 market. The average person at the Mile 12 market didn't feel the impact of. So yeah, it was a lot of people said much ado about nothing. It was impressive speech it's just like what elites do and economists do, to say that, okay, the economy is doing well by showing us how well the stock market is doing. Persons who bring money to the stock market are not necessarily interested in the economy. If you really want to develop the economy and you want to employ people, you have to come and build factories. You have to come and invest in physically what will make people directly get jobs, not what will make shareholders richer. So that's what happened with that speech.
But I want to go back to something that you said. You know, you went back to Occupy Nigeria, and of course, during Occupy Nigeria, we also saw that President Goodluck Jonathan at the time was forced to reverse the price of petrol. However, the government has said, this same government who encouraged all of us to actually protest against the increase of petrol at the time, President Tinubu, who was at the forefront of that protest, has now said, look, I hear you, but I can't go back to the previous price because subsidy is gone. So how is it? And I have to ask, because many people will say it is unrealistic to ask or to expect, rather, which is what a lot of people want to expect, the petrol pump price to go to the price pre-May 25th, I think is when it was signed in. So how can government actually affect that? How realistic is that demand?
Okay, that's a demand. And one thing I usually say in response to this question is, every time I've been asked, is the negotiators are not unrealistic or unrealistic people. Anybody that is going into a negotiation in good faith has to know that compromise is one of the components of every important negotiation. So this time, it looked like the government is not even willing to budge, it's not willing to compromise. And that really shows that the government is not listening to the average man on the street. It's easy to listen to propagandists and to aides around you who are deceiving you and be thinking that, okay, all is well and good. And we have seen it. The past governments, the past presidents or governors who have left their various seats of power, they have seen the repercussions even after they've left, that nobody is singing their songs as heroes, because the persons whom they surrounded themselves with practically shielded them from the reality of what the average persons are facing, not just in Nigeria, everywhere. And it is very, very unfortunate that that is what we are facing now. The negotiators are not unrealistic.
But if I may interrupt you, who are the negotiators? Justice, who are the negotiators? Because Shawari has come out, but we know he's in New Jersey. Who are the negotiators? We have a coalition of civil society. Who are they going to negotiate with?
My sister, that's a very, very important question. There are some important persons in this movement.
Such as?
That the president could have, of course, you dropped the name. You dropped the
but
name of...
Shawari is in New Jersey.
Okay. There is the Jade Yonju.
Okay.
In Lagos.
Yes.
There is Mr. Onogorua, senior advocate in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. There is my very good friend Hassan Soweto, who there is Juwon, there is Juwon too. And just I'm not saying they are the leader. I'm not saying that they are the only persons to talk to in the protest, but at least you can use them as a yardstick or as a totem to be able to say that, okay, this is largely what is unanimous amongst them, and make some concessions in good faith. That's when people will be able to say, okay, this government is actually listening to us. But unfortunately, that wasn't the situation. It was just much verbosity about nothing. That was what we experienced in the last speech, and it is very, very unfortunate.
Okay. Before we move away from Nigeria, I've got two more questions. You mentioned, first and foremost, everybody says hunger, and we all agree the price of food, it's literally impossible. There's no other way to put it. It is impossible. You talked about the deflation of food prices. Give me an example of an immediate, a low-hanging fruit that government can do to deflate food prices before I go on to my last question on Nigeria, and then we can move on to the next part.
The lowest hanging fruit is the price of fuel, because it is the price of fuel that actually affected everything.
But he says he can't go back. He can't go back.
No. And that's the part where Nigerians are not happy with. That's what makes him unreasonable. We don't want the CNG promises that is perpetual and eternal, and we never ever practically see it. They talk about rice being 40,000 naira sent to the streets, and it is just today or yesterday that we got to know again that they have withdrawn it. There is nothing practical that they have said in their own ivory towers or high horses that has been able to get to the average Nigerian on the street. So touch on that issue. Touch on the subsidy issue. Subsidy is even present. They talked about spending $600 million on fuel every month. That was what the Minister for Finance said yesterday. That tells me that it's still present. So why are we
Indeed.
deceiving ourselves? Why not reduce the pump price so that it can have an effect across board and cut down on the crass inflation? You see, when you talk about 30% inflation, you talk about, for me, I just think those are official figures. It is not realistic. We are seeing one bulb of tomato sell for 300 naira, 500 naira, just one. How many do you need to make a pot of stew? How are people even surviving in this country?
Indeed.
So those are some of the realities that so there is a lot, their informal figures are much more worse than the formal inflation figures. I just pray that the government is not using its awesome power to commandeer the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics to kowtow to figures that they wish that will make them not look as bad as they truly and really are.
Okay, thank you. You can and you will be able to call on 0201-277-0993, 0201-465-7190. You can send a WhatsApp right now as I am in conversation. Remember, as we do on Borderlines, he's my guest first before he becomes your guest. Okay, so be patient. You can send a WhatsApp message to 0809-597-5805. At some point, I will pick up the calls. Justice, before we leave Nigeria, and do not call, please stop calling. I can see the lines going, do not call. This is not the time yet. This is Borderlines. Before we move on tonight from Nigeria, one of the demands was a reduction in government excesses, which is the size of governance, the spend of governance, the salaries of governance, and the fact that the government, FG, keeps telling us to be patient, yet they tell us to persevere, but they don't seem to appear to be cutting their spend. What would you say to that? And really, should Nigeria, does FG have the right to tell us to be patient or to persevere when they're clearly not persevering in any way?
Okay, of course they can say it, but they are morally not entitled to say it. Because they, just like you said, they are not persevering at all. We saw the vice president. There's a video of him that is making the rounds now, where he talked about the fact that some poor persons on the street were warning the driver of his wife and practically warning him too that, so you are living in your ivory towers and we are coming for you. He made that video. I think it's an old video, but again, it's now bankruptcy of truthfulness when this same person was Osinbajo living under the bridge?
It's a good question. Oh, is that the network? Oh dear. The network seems to have frozen. I'm hoping.
Own house.
Yeah, go ahead. Justice, we missed. Sorry, can you repeat that again? You said, is Osinbajo living under the bridge? Go ahead. We missed what you said after that.
Was Osinbajo living under the bridge when he was president? Why did Shettima become president immediately and we are spending 21 billion naira to refurbish his residence?
Yeah.
The president went on a climate conference in Dubai and see the humongous number of persons that followed him. We are buying private yacht for the president. We are buying a private jet for the president for $100 million. See, total amount for $100 million in Nigerian naira now is about 165 billion naira. The total amount that is given to students, we pray that it's totally disbursed. It's 40 billion naira to all the students in public schools in Nigeria as a loan. So for me, a lot of these things don't add up. Yeah, we heard the legislators say that, okay, they want to get half of their salary for 6 months. For me, a lot of things were left unsaid. What of the bonuses? It is not the salaries we are scared of. It is the humongous bonuses. Until now, it's been 25 years of democracy. My sister, we still do not know, as public information, the amount that is being paid a Nigerian legislator, it is still shrouded in the utmost level of secrecy in a country that has the Freedom of Information Act. So many applications have been made to court, and this is still not disclosed to the Nigerian people. And the Nigerian people are supposed to be the ones paying these public servants. So a lot of things are just hypocritical, waste here and there. And the president talks about us just exercising patience, giving him patience. Nigerians are not plagued with amnesia. This is not the first time we are hearing this. Hope is the perpetual thing that the average politician will sell to you, not just in Nigeria, but everywhere across the world. But at least in some other parts of the world, they try to meet the people halfway by achieving the hope that they have sold to the people. But in Nigeria, Buhari in the first year told us to wait our hope. The second year, give me some patience. Third year, give me some patience. Fourth year, until he spent 8 years. And
I really don't want to move away from Nigeria. Okay, so I'm going to ask you something before we move on from Nigeria, because I'm really enjoying this conversation, and clearly all our listeners are enjoying this conversation on Nigeria Info 99.3, and my guest is Justice. That's his name, not his job. He's a lawyer, right? Justice, it's interesting that you mentioned Buhari's 8 years, and he came in and he said, be patient, and we kept patient, and we kept patient. Why did we wait? Because here's the thing. After GEJ, during GEJ, we said anybody but GEJ. So we got Buhari. After Buhari, during Buhari, we said anybody but Buhari. We waited 8 years and we started to say anybody but Buhari, right? That he doesn't listen. The man told us he doesn't know. Well, like, okay, which planet are you living on? Because clearly you're not living in the same country as us, if you don't know. And I think it was, if I may quote, I think, if I'm trying to remember, Professor Anthony Killer, who said, is he a dunce? That he says he doesn't know. And he said this on TV. Now, here's the thing. Here we are now, Tinubu, and we're now saying anybody but Tinubu. Why didn't we go out and protest during Buhari? This protest that we're having now. Why did we wait as a people for it to get this bad? Because we knew subsidy was going to go. We knew President Buhari assigned in the PIA. Subsidy go was always in the conversation. What is it about us that made us wait so long?
Okay, for me, I also participated in the NSAS protest, and that happened under Buhari. So, but yeah, and that happened spontaneously because the SARS became in Malays, too terrible to bear. But with Mr. Tinubu now, I'm not saying he should go. I'm saying he should listen. If he listens, I think we'll be in a better place. So there's nothing personal against him. And I keep saying that the right to protest, we exercised it with him before he became president. We are exercising it now during his presidency. And when he's done being president, as an activist, he should join us in protesting against the next president, because there is the next president will not be perfect, because it's not going to be made from heaven. It's going to be a Nigerian. And he's probably going to make some mistakes that the people are going to want to protest against. So it is actually that right to protest. And now the reason why I think that people are protesting is, first, they are more literate and educated. That's number one. Number two, which is even more important than number one, is that it has never been this bad. It has never been this bad. No matter how well-meaning the president or his team are, they are not getting it right. And the average Nigerian has a right to go out to say, Mr. President and your team, no, we do not like these your policies. It is rubbing on us very, very terribly. Okay. And I think that is the reason why it is coming this early in his administration. Okay,
thank you so much. We'll move to Bangladesh now, because I'm going to ask you, what are the common denominators? Of course, every protester, every Nigerian, everybody I've spoken to will say the last 10 days of protest, did not fail. Right? We even had the women's protest yesterday. Women Manifesto. They were out protesting in Alausa. So, when women come out, the levels change, right? You know what we're like. So here's the thing. At this point in Bangladesh, the president of Bangladesh, she's been pushed out and she has had to resign. She's been there for like some 2 decades or so. And even though her father, or is it a grandfather, was part of the formation of Bangladesh, what are the common denominators between Nigeria and Bangladesh and our protests? And do you think people power is beginning to shape democracy?
Okay, for me, I think that the common denominators first, Nigeria and Bangladesh are a lot alike. They're a lot alike, except that they are actually doing a whole lot better than this country. Their poverty rate is less than 12%, whilst ours is we are the country with the largest poor people on the face of the earth. Their economy is almost like ours. They also had something like NSAS not too long ago. They had a SARS outfit that was really, really terrible not too long ago. But the most common denominator, what happened in Bangladesh was a set of students were saying that, sorry, you cannot keep a quota of civil service jobs for certain persons because maybe they fought for their fathers or grandfathers fought for the country before. No, this is now a different situation. Don't be nepotistic. The primary cause was nepotism. They told the president that, sorry, don't do this. The president, of course, refused because she was listening to only the persons in her kitchen cabinet. Every other person that speaks negative of the government is an enemy of the government, must be a member of the opposition. And that was what happened. They were not listening until it snowballed from students to non-students and everything. And the Madam President had to sky to India. Unfortunately, we pray. And of course, let me tell you another uniqueness of this protest. It was taken advantage of by BNP. BNP has always been antagonizing and they don't mind inciting war. That's not what is happening in Nigeria, especially in southern part of Nigeria. I won't be naive to say that some political interests will not want to take advantage of it in Nigeria. But that organically is not what is happening in Nigeria. And we pray that Nigeria never ever gets to that extent. But it will only not get to that extent if the leaders listen genuinely to the people.
It's interesting that you said listen, and earlier on when we're talking about Nigeria, you said the problem with Mr. President, that's President Tinubu, is that we want him to listen to us. I need to ask you, is there any more hope left for us in President Tinubu at this time? Given, and I grant, he's only been there for a year and a bit, right? Is there any more hope left in the administration of President Tinubu, which we have to deal with constitutionally for the next 4 years or 3.5 years remaining? Is there any more hope left? Because the Bangladeshis kept having hope in Madam President, as you rightly said, till it got to the point where they're like, enough, you've got to go, right? So do we still have hope in President Tinubu, or should we still have hope in President Tinubu? Is it all that we need is for him to listen and act, at least show us that he's heard us and make at least one change?
Okay, for me, I am also damned. I'm a damned optimist, and I hope and pray for him to actually, at some point, listen to the direct Nigerian populace and not just propagandists and people who are bent because of their interest to keep telling him that all is well, all is well, all is well. So I hope and pray that at some point this trajectory doesn't continue. I hope and pray that there are some projections that he has made, that I pray that they start yielding returns, because if they do not start yielding returns, I pray that we do not see the alternative. I pray that we do not go
As a learned man, I have to interrupt you. We need to get away from prayer. And I often say this because God does what God does. And God does the spiritual part. We humans are the ones that are in Nigeria. So what do we, prayer is a given, I would say. What is it? What's the smart action, the smartness that we need the president to do now for us to remain hopeful in him?
Yeah, when I say I pray, of course, I'm not talking.
Okay, you're using the lawyer prayer. You're using the lawyer prayer.
I'm not using it. I'm not using it
in the spiritual term.
In a way that,
yes,
I'm not using it in a way that a lot of Nigerians use it by resigning from the use of their brain that God has given to them to solve their problems and just dumping the responsibility on deity. So that is why I'm saying that I wish that he listens to the people directly. And of course, if he listens to the people directly, he will be able to feel their pains. And he will be able to directly and quickly and frontally implement policies that will quickly, low-hanging fruits, just like everybody has said, touch on the price of this thing that is making all things rise. The price of all things rise. So he needs to do that. And some of the things that they talk at policy level, Mr. President needs persons on ground to actually ensure that these things are being carried out. And I also don't like a situation where the president is talking about the things that he has done, especially to governors, and the governors are coming out frontally to contradict him and saying, sorry, you didn't give us any, I've not seen any 570 billion. So who should we trust? The government shouldn't put itself in a situation where it starts having bankruptcy of trust within the people. The immediate past Minister of Information, for example, there's nothing that can come out of his mouth. Again, at some point, he lost so much credibility. Yeah. There's nothing that could come out of his mouth that anybody will feel that, okay, this person is even saying true, because at some point, he just assumed that Nigerians were dimwits, total imbeciles. So this government too seems to be going in that trajectory by making unlimited number of promises and people cannot even see it on ground. So I think that too should be worked on because, again, to a large extent, confidence in government, despite the fact that it is now tattered currency, it still has some level of currency because the day people decide that they have absolutely no hope in government, then it means that, God forbid, the Obesian state of nature.
Indeed. So let's talk about democracy in itself, because you mentioned about trust. Is democracy on trial? Is democracy dependent, the survival or the continuation, the progress, the maturity of democracy? Would you say it is primarily dependent on trust? And if the people do not have trust in their leaders, why then should democracy continue?
Okay, for me, I think that I'll join the school of thought of persons who say that the worst democracy is better than the best dictatorship or military. Well, now I've said dictatorship because our democracy is practically almost tending towards dictatorship. It's unfortunate that we have a situation where, I think it was yesterday, where the Nigerian Labour Congress building was raided in a Gestapo style. That's a huge dent on what we call our democracy. Aside the fact that, let me tell you why this protest, part of the reasons why it gained ground. In a democracy, generally, we usually talk about the legislature being a check on executive powers. In Nigeria, unfortunately, it is no longer like that. There was a saying by a politician recently that our legislature is just like a department or an agency in the arm of the executive. And it is unfortunately so. So the executive, awesome powers of the executive, as encapsulated in Section 130 of our Constitution, is not checked by the legislature. The only checks that we have that is even holding the executive accountable is NLC, even though it looked to protesters generally on the street that NLC bailed out The NLC is no longer as strong as it was. Of course, we lived in a country where Oshomole practically was a rival president. So now we saw a situation where even the NLC bailed out. That was what made the Parliament of the people directly come out in protest to make several demands. And again, that wasn't granted. So we must at least ensure. Yeah, and we saw what happened to protesters. Of course, we thank God for what happened in Lagos State. And we thank God for everybody that participated in Lagos State to ensure that the dogs of war are held back on the streets. But in other parts of Nigeria, we're not as lucky. Indeed. But again, should we now say that because of the danger or the fear, the Nigerian law enforcement will perpetually say we have intelligence reports that the protest can degenerate into chaos. There is no protest that people had wanted to go out for that the Nigerian law enforcement will not say they have intelligence reports. Let me even give you an example of what happened in 2003 when Buhari wanted to go and protest against Olusegun Obasanjo at the time. That was when the Nigerian police came. Of course, they said that Buhari couldn't go out because he needed a license. He needed a license pursuant to the Public Order Act. And he was like, no, I have a constitutional right to protest. That Public Order Act was the law put in place by colonialists so that the average Nigerian citizen couldn't ask for independence. Okay. So Buhari approached Femi Falana to say, sorry, Oga, I don't have money. Is there a way you can defend me? Femi Falana defended him. And the court stated in that case, AMPP and IGP, that every Nigerian has a right to protest. Indeed. And it is the job of law enforcement and the Nigerian police to ensure that anybody who wants to come and cause chaos in protests are arrested and made to face the music. Okay. Right. Give me, the lines are going. You can call now. I'm trying to get the WhatsApp number. If you want to call, you can call now because we have a short show. We're finishing it literally in about 8 minutes. All right. I'm coming to your calls now. Be precise. Just a question, please. Question. That is what you get to. Your name, where you're calling from, and your question. Otherwise, I have to cut you off. Thank you. Hello.
Good evening, Cecile.
Good evening. Good evening.
At the protest ground, I saw counter-protesters do their thing even before the day we came to protest, and nothing happened to them. My question to your guest this evening is that, so far so good, for those who think that this protest yielded nothing, what would you tell them this evening? Okay. Secondly... No, you get one question, Mrs. Oboli. The lines are going. Justice, I need you to write that down because the lines are going now.
Okay.
Hello.
Madam Security.
Good afternoon. Your name, where you're calling from, and your question, please.
AY from Badagry.
Go ahead.
Please, I want your guest to trash out this issue of the flags, the Russian flags that were raised.
Okay. What is your question?
My question is, isn't that a sign that there are loopholes in the country, especially maybe the northern region as we speak now?
Okay, thank you.
Are we giving rights to Wagner, whatnot to come in?
Thank you. Excellent question. Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Your name, where you're calling from? Please turn your radio off now, please.
All right.
Right. Your name, where you're calling from, and your question, please.
My name is Godman.
Pardon?
Godman.
Okay, go ahead. Your question, please.
All right. I want to know now this protest of God is almost like one into the like this is a yellow card, red card.
It's not clear. I need you to speak very clearly, please. Go ahead. Start again.
So I wanted to know now the people of God are to give the government a yellow card. I'm telling them the red card is coming if you don't do something. So I wanted to know if we can have like a group.
Like a what?
A group, an organization, community, whereby it's just for protest.
You want to know if we can have a group that's just for protest? Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Government on edge, to do the right thing.
Okay, thank you. Right, there's the last. I'm going to pick up the last question for you now because I'm only going to give you 5 minutes to answer all of them. You have to be short and precise. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Sister.
Good afternoon. Your name, where you're calling from, please, and your question.
My name is Mazude.
Go ahead.
Our guest now is talking about subsidies. I want to ask him, don't you think that our problem today in Nigeria is dollar price to the naira? That naira is down. Don't you think that it's better for we to get naira down like 300 naira to 200 naira or 250 so that everything will be better?
Thank you very much.
I want to know that than oil subsidy.
Thank you very much. Right. Justice, can you still hear me?
Loud and clear.
Excellent.
Loud and clear.
I'm going to give you 5 minutes, literally, till 5 o'clock on the dot to address all of those. You can take them all together or take them one at a time.
Okay.
The lines are still going crazy.
Okay, I think that the first caller started on a wrong premise. I was at Ojota. There were counter-protesters, and the counter-protesters were not peaceful at all. I had occasions to directly talk to the CP one-on-one, and he made me meet the CP, and we had conversations. We talked one-on-one, and of course, I am happy that the Nigerian police protected at least the protesters. And we also saw that even journalists were not spared, especially on one of the last days of the protest. He made the rounds. I don't know whether that caller actually saw that call. On the question of the Russian flag, yes. It's unfortunate that it's possible that some persons are trying to take advantage of the fact that we are protesting against bad governance in Nigeria to invite counter governance. I am not in support of that. As a democracy activist, it is impossible for me to stretch any kind of logic to be able to be in support of that. But as to whether the government will be able to prove treason against young children who actually participated in the protest, in carrying the flag, I think it's going to be practically impossible. As a litigator, I feel that the court will most likely say that they don't have what's called mens rea, the intention to actually do that. Even though they carried the flag, they didn't know what it meant. So they are probably going to be let off the hook. Okay, as for the organization, the third caller said that can't we have an organization or a group? Yeah, there are plenty of organizations that are actually in charge of protests. But the challenge with this one was that nobody wanted there to be an obvious head because, of course, we know what the government will do. They will decapitate it. And once they decapitate it, practically it disintegrates into a mess and into oblivion. So that was why this protest was organic and didn't have one acknowledged leader. So as for the caller that talked about the challenge in Nigeria being the price of forex, he actually didn't maybe appreciate the fact that subsidy and the price of forex, they are actually Siamese twins. Whatever happens in the economy, actually, with respect to subsidy, would actually also affect, is the reason why forex has gone haywire, aside from some other bad policies of government and devaluation. I hope I've done justice in 5 minutes.
You've more than done justice. I still have more questions. So I have questions on WhatsApp. Excellent. You must come back, Justice, because I mean, my people, the lines are crazy. WhatsApp is full. Right. Here's a good question that I have from Taiwo in Ejigbo on our WhatsApp, which is 080959758505 Nigeria Info 99.3. Taiwo says, hello, Cecil. Please ask your guest this question. If this protest fails to achieve our desired objective, what do you think Nigerians should do next? That's one. And then the second one is this, which I'm going to give you 2 minutes to answer both. Good afternoon, Cecil Gay, Radio Goddess. Democracy system in Nigeria has never favored the masses. The worst of us are ruling the best amongst us. Can we have a system whereby we make government office a part-time or consultative one? If you fail to deliver, we sack you and get another consultant. That's from Yomi Morio Konla. You've got 3 minutes for that. It's now 49. Yeah. You have to be done by 53.
What do you think Nigeria should do next? Yeah, protests have come, and of course, it's only on rare occasions that one singular protest can actually solve all problems. Yeah, some protests too will come up and will not be as effective as the protesters actually thought. But again, the struggle should always continue in democracy. No democracy can be perfect. protests are in place to ensure that democracy gets better. So that's my answer to that one. And that's why in struggles, we usually talk about Aluta Continua Victoria Asata. That phrase will never ever be dumped. So democracy has actually made this country better. It may be hard for us to be able to acknowledge that, but that can we actually get something better from a better democracy? That is why we are on the streets. I was also during the military, and the country is not, you don't enjoy, I can't talk freely like this without looking at my back. So these are some of the dividends of democracy. As for the kind of, whether I should get consultants to come and, my brother needs to know that governance is a full-time job. Yes, even on the sidelines, while we talk like this, we are not talking because we feel that, okay, if we are there, we'll solve all the problems once. We are just there to ensure that the envelope is pushed. Because if we do not push the persons in governance, because of the palatial kind of life, that free money that you have access to because the public gave you the right to be able to sign their accounts, you forget. So that's why we are here to ensure that we keep putting pressure on you in order for you to be able to do better.
You're doing great, because I can now sneak in the UK very quickly. So we've seen riots. We've seen riots, race riots in the UK. We've seen Muslims and Africans. There's been Nigerians who have been attacked. And part of the response that people have said, you can probably tell from my accent, I grew up there. I have my son there. I have my nephew there. Some of my sisters are still there. Most of us have family in the UK. However, when it got to a crescendo and we got scared 3 days ago, everybody was saying, this is why Nigeria needs to get better. This is why Africa needs to get better. If we can't go to the UK, we can't go to South Africa because of xenophobia. You can't go anywhere in Europe, and Nigeria is not good. Where do we go? Justice. Nigeria, what's next?
UK is too small in landmass to be able to take the Nigerians, and that's why we have to keep on the neck of these our leaders. Yeah, I must keep saying that we pray for them, not spirit. I'm not, just like I said earlier, I'm not outsourcing my brain. So we must keep ensuring that we hold them accountable. We remind them that Nigerians there, a lot of them don't want to be there, because the fact that you have xenophobia, and we must go back to the fact that it is innate. It is not just a UK thing. It's not just a South African thing. At some point in our own country, we had Ghana must go.
Indeed.
We chased Ghanaians, Zimbabweans too. They chased Indians away. Uganda too. During the Idi Dada, they chased Indians away. So these things happen everywhere. When there are challenges, when people are having economic downtime, they tend to look for the next thing to use as scapegoat. So that is why we are calling on the government to do better, improve our economy. Our people do not want to be there.
Justice Ojienoh, or a partner at Eco Solicitors and Advocates. Justice, you've got to come back. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you. You must return to Borderlines. Thank you so much for unpacking democracy, protest, and people power for us. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cecile. Thank you.
Lagos, Nigeria, wherever you've been listening for, that has been another riveting, educative, borderline show for you on a Friday. Coming up next, we have to finish early because it's the Olympics, as you know. Nigeria is not doing so good. What do we do? Toby Amushwa is out. The football people are waiting at the gate. They're about to throw me out of the studio. So stay tuned. Yvonne will be here with the news, and then come football. I don't even know. I give up. Nigeria, we're out that. We need one medal. Just one. Cecile Gay signing out. Have a fabulous weekend, people. Bye-bye. .9
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.